The American Melting Pot. The early history of government in the United States exhibits different types of democracy, both locally and morally commingled. Natural democracy appears among independent pioneers, joining forces casually or in small immigrant groups. These casual comrades were not foreigners to one another. They were chiefly British, chiefly Protestants. All were enterprising, all bent on gaining great wealth while preserving a radical independence. Yet there was likely to be, from the beginning, a profound distrust of one another latent among them. In spite of belonging to the same rising flood of revolution in Christendom, they represented various currents within that flood, taking different turns and sliding into various pools of relative tranquility. Some immigrants represented factions in British political life that already demanded a revolutionary democracy. Others felt themselves to be potential landlords, more absolute and on a larger scale than the old world, already preempted and riddled with privileges and mortgages allowed to its hereditary nobility. A few were actually cavaliers, young sons of great families, bound to outdo, in El Dorado, the unfair advantages of their elder brothers at home. We may say that in this democratic concourse of social atoms, there lay types of oligarchy in the germ which would assert themselves when they got a chance. Even in public and political life, oligarchical instincts and intuitions reassert themselves when planning or executive capacity is needed. The few whom education and private fortune had accustomed to understand and manage complex affairs put their heads together, took the lead in framing resolutions and proposing measures, and if they did so in conventional language, without any air of superiority, the vaguely puzzled and vaguely trustful crowd accepted their suggestions, so that the private minority actually dominated the popular majority that nominally dominated the active members. The American passion for organization is no doubt fostered by the competition, efficiency, and commercial economy, but I suspect that it is secretly stimulated also by thirst for distinction. For this passion appears where no material advantage is expected. In amateur sports, for instance, in the innumerable societies and associations and clubs and Greek letter fraternities that segregate their members, not because initially distinguished, but because they thirst to become in some way segregated and distinguishable. Sometimes, I think exceptionally, real affinities produce special clubs, but often a club is found for no reason except the hope of creating special affinities. Two fraternities or two houses will be founded in a college instead of one only, so that emulation may supply an interest in belonging to them at all, and a flattering belief in each that it is better than the other. Such feeble echoes of tribal feuds and tribal taboos may seem ridiculous amidst the swarming, rumbling, and smoking flats of modern industry, with their tragic revolutions and wars, and certainly those manifestations of homesickness seem impotent bubbles in the flood of democracy sweeping over the world. Yet in the midst of this deluge, in the family and social life of those most identified with the new order, there are more serious symptoms of radical aversion from it, an aversion that may well survive the inundation and reappear like the submerged crests of the ancient mountains when the waters recede. The most obvious of these latent but ineradicable diversities in the American people is that of race, which in the case of the Negroes can hardly be made to disappear by fusion. An exceptional strain of Negro blood, diluted each generation, may retain in a few white families, but the mass of mulattoes will remain attached, even in the capacity of leaders, to the black population, which will know how to develop its own institutions in the places where it congregates, or where it might govern itself to advantage. Some European groups, preserving their language and religion, might also form local societies. It happens that the Catholics, who have the strongest religious organization, with a complete Catholic education possible for their young people, are socially segregated, even when they belong to the professional classes. But the fact that many of them, being of Irish extraction, speak only English, has made this social segregation less profound and less general than it would otherwise have become. I think, however, that they are already socially happier and more complete in themselves, with perfect friendliness to the surrounding Protestant community, in which religion is less distinguishable from the lay spirit of the times and of the political echoes of the country. The most distinguished, most equivocal, but I think the most profound of these special societies is that of the Jews. Besides their traditional financial activity and influence, they play a leading part among the intellectuals and the artists, so much so that at times it seems as if they were simply, in those spheres, the true leading Americans. But this is a false appearance produced by publicity, which is an omnipotent but superficial force. It is superficial even in the Jews who most engage in it, and both they and their public really need something better, and will recognize it when it appears. How uncomfortable the Jews are in their expertness, how dissatisfied in their success, cannot escape a careful observer. And their philosophies, too, are insecure, serving two masters, whether they wish to be submerged in the Gentile world, provided they may lead it, or to conquer that world expressly for Zion. But in that case, would not Zion itself have lost its sacred and specific character? Or language and culture are no longer distinct for the Gentile and for the Jew? Something else still separates them. The true virtue and supreme pleasure of the Jew were always a closed book for the Gentile, and the true virtue and supreme pleasure of the Gentile are a closed door for the Jew. If these observations are just, the American melting pot is not destined to fuse all the ingredients thrown into it in an indiscriminate mass. It may prove rather like the cauldron of boiling oil into which St. John, the beloved disciple, was cast according to the received tradition near the Porta Latina in Rome. He thereby earned the palm of martyrdom, which he had come to challenge. But he now knew the spirit he was of, and was miraculously rescued to live to an extreme old age and compose his immortal works. But perhaps from this modern melting pot, two different Johns will arise, the one Jewish to compose a militant political apocalypse, and the other Gentile to write a disillusioned spiritual gospel.